Welcome to Valor Conversations. I'm your host, Jay Trainer. Valor Conversations is powered by CSB Ministries and is the official podcast of Christian Service Brigade. For more information, please visit csbministries.org. And now, on with the show. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Valor Conversations. We have been interviewing a ton of people about the nature of what it means to make changes and influence individuals in our current series called Culture Changers. I hope that you are learning as much as I am about the nature of culture and the ministry impact that believers can have within it. It's pretty unique and awesome opportunity when you really think about it. Today, it's a privilege to have Steve Clark on, who is not only a friend in ministry, but also has a huge heart to want to make a difference in our world today. Steve leads both Delta Lake Bible Conference in Rome, New York, and Generous Brands, which is a branch off of Haven Camp, so we'll be talking about that. It's an impactful program that employs people from all walks of life. Steve, it's great to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so starting off today, I would just love everyone to hear some of your own personal ministry philosophy in order to add context for the sake of the discussion today. How about you provide some of your own story and your own background for us today?
Sure. I grew up at camp, so me being at camp now is something that's pretty familiar. My dad actually was a director here back in the late 80s, and so I came as a camper. I came as a young person on staff, actually live in the house that I lived in when I was a kid, so that's a little odd. But grew up in an environment watching people serve and watching people serve others. And, went to college, continued to be involved in camping, had a time working, in the for-profit realm, doing insurance and have gotten experience in a number of different areas, but, God continued to kind of call me and then after getting married, my family back into ministry. And so, from a philosophy of ministry, I think, our role in the parachurch, arena is really to be available, to be in a position to serve, to be in a position to meet the need of the guest, whatever that might be. And that takes on a lot of different forms, based on who the person is, based on kind of where they're coming from, or based on what baggage, they might come in with, or what skills and abilities they come to the table with. And so, our role is to try to, I think, decipher that and prayerfully just consider how we can be involved as a resource, or how we can be involved to help or to just find ways to plug somebody in to help, to serve. So, I think camp is a place where a lot of different things happen. And, being a director of a camp, you get to witness all of those aspects and often take part in all those aspects. I mean, we're your typical smaller not-for-profit. And I think that's great because I often am not sitting behind a desk. I enjoy that. It can be challenging at times, but we're here getting our hands dirty and preparing week in and week out to serve people, whoever it is that God brings our way.
Awesome. Well, thank you for providing that context. So tell us a little bit about Generous Brands, Haven Camps, and the backstory there. How did you get from directing a camp, Delta Lake, to now leading a coffee roasting business and a t-shirt printing company and other things that are really on the horizon? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been here 10 years now, which in camping years is a long time.
It's eternity. That's a long time.
So for Delta Lake, we're actually preparing to celebrate 100 years in 2024. So Delta Lake's been here a long time. Back in 1971, a gentleman began what we now know as Haven Camps. It wasn't that at the time, but and Haven Camp serves folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And for decades, that was through camping. It was through folks coming to us and us caring for them and again, meeting their needs and helping them and directing them towards Jesus. And in my time over the last 10 years, one of the things that I've felt more and more, I think, passionate about is that we're not here at Delta Lake and then through Haven Camps. We're not here just for these folks to come and be campers. It's more than that. It's more of a part of our DNA as a ministry that they're involved in all aspects of what we do. And so about 5 years ago, we began some conversations and began to partner with a few of the local agencies and actually had teams of folks come in different days of the week and begin to work around camp. They were looking for places to go. And just like any camp, the need for people to come during the week just to do anything and everything, stripping beds, helping do laundry, vacuum. I mean, you name it. There's things
Clean
going
up,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, there's things going on every week. And so we began with these partnerships. Again, not probably your typical church or Christian partnership. I mean, we're working with these large agencies that are caring for these folks, and we want to care for them too, but maybe in a little different way. And part of caring for them for us was providing a place where they knew they belonged, a place where they knew they could come and kind of be a part of our team. And so they would come, and it began with these teams just coming a couple days a week and doing odd jobs around camp. For a number of years, I have talked to our board about the idea of coffee. And part of it is because I love coffee. Part of it is because you could just begin to see that this environment of coffee and coffee shops being that place that people would just go and regularly go. But you go into a coffee shop and it doesn't matter if it's a mom and pop place in a big city, if it's one of your name brand Starbucks or something like that. You go in and there's people that are gathered, and they're gathered there to sit and talk and to just hang out, to do work. I mean, you name it, they're doing it at coffee shops. And so it's become that water cooler place. And so I just sensed the need for us to get involved in that in some way. And began to talk to a friend of ours who had a coffee business. And so this is kind of the long part of the story, but to really shorten it, we were beginning to work towards getting a coffee shop. And our whole goal was to create a place that would give folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities a place to come and learn, to give them job skills, to give them a chance to work and gain experience, and hopefully eventually create employment opportunities for them. And so little did we know that God had a little bit of some different plans in store. We began with a printing company because of some connections and conversations. And I tell you, this is one of those things where you just see God at work, where if you have things that he lays on your heart and things that you're passionate about, talk about them. Because the first thing would not have happened had I not begun to share with other people, like different things that we were looking at and different things that we thought the Lord was moving in. And an opportunity came up and they're like, hey, didn't you talk about Delta Lake getting into maybe doing printing and working with people with disabilities? Well, I know somebody that knows somebody, and they have equipment. They're trying to get rid of equipment. And so we began a print shop. And since then have also started a coffee roasting business. And in each case, we've been able to create opportunities for folks through these various agencies and different programs that they have that come and work and to gain work experience. And in two of the cases, they're on our payroll now. And so there are folks that would not have ordinarily had a paying job or been able to get one that now, come to work, really come with a purpose each day, know that this is a place again where they belong, where there's community for them. And they're bringing home a paycheck and learning real, skills at the same time.
That's amazing. And to think the reach, right? You have told me privately how far the coffee roasting business has reached in our world. Why don't you share that with our audience, and then we'll bring it back to the local story even of talking about Jason.
Yeah, sure. So coffee, it's funny. Coffee is the second highest traded commodity in the world next to oil. So there's coffee beans all over the world. And, the internet makes the world a smaller place. And so through people ordering online, like we've had orders, we've shipped coffee to Alaska, we've shipped coffee to California, to Arizona. Obviously right here in New York, kind of at all points of the state, but And what's really cool is that, in the labeling of the coffee, the back of it tells the story of Generous Brands and tells the story of Generous Roasting, and
Mm,
describes the fact that this is a place that has been created for the purpose of, yes, giving you good coffee, but at the same time, um, enabling folks that have disabilities, and really people of all abilities, but really gearing to people that have disabilities, to give them that place to work and to call home.
mm. Awesome. Love hearing about that. And so let's talk about from your perspective on how does this type of work, this type of organizational development impact culture? You've definitely scratched the surface and talked about that, but also as a follow-up to that, what is your definition and overall understanding of perspective of culture in the first place?
Yeah, so there's two things that come to mind when I think of culture. One is I think the broad topic of culture, like where we see things today,
Mm,
what we unfortunately maybe what we see in the news, but just what's going on
yeah.
in general. Kind of like an overall tenor of society.
Mm,
Um, and then I think you can dig down the idea of culture to look at what's the culture of a business, or what's the culture of a ministry, or what's the culture that surrounds an entity. And so one of the things when I got here 10 years ago that I felt the need to do was just to work on the overall culture of a ministry. And that's not to say the culture was bad, but I think what I say to change it, and it's almost maybe to refine it or to really help us refocus it. So as a
mm,
ministry, we need to really focus on our culture internally. um, yeah, we serve people, but how does the culture of the ministry, how does the culture of the organization show, and what are the ways that we can improve on that culture
mm,
uh, of taking care of people, of meeting the needs of people? It's not that we weren't doing it, but I think there's times where when you do something for so long and the same people are always doing it, you kind of lose focus. And so the intentionality of looking at the culture of the organization or the culture of the ministry was key.
mm,
And as we moved into this idea with Generous Brands, again, I don't think it was shifting culture or rewriting our culture, but I think again it's honing in on the culture
mm,
and our desire to serve. And it just maybe changed a little bit of our, well, so who is it that we serve?
mm,
There's a camp director that I know. I can't say I know him really well, but Ron Mackey runs Deerfoot, which
mm.
is a wonderful ministry. And
We've
um,
had him on this podcast
yeah,
before, believe it or not.
yeah, Ron's great. There was a day we sat down and talked, and I was asking him because they were starting this new venture in North Carolina, Deerfoot
Mm,
Blue, and what I talked about honestly, and I admitted to him, I said, "This is a selfish piece for me. Like you're starting something brand new, and so you can create culture. You're not changing it; you're creating it from the ground up."
mm,
And so I just wanted to talk to him about the culture of his ministry, of the ministry that he was in charge of. And I'm a younger director and I'm kind of new. And so um, it was, and one of the things that really stuck out to me that he shared was, the culture of Deerfoot, it's finding the things that the unique qualities that God has set aside for you as a ministry. What are those things? Like, what are the
mm.
things that make us unique? And it's not that we're only going to do something that nobody else is doing, but it was how
Right.
do you hone in on those things that has you set apart? And I said, well, to me, it was our Haven Camp program that serve people with disabilities. There's a lot of camps that do family camp. There's a lot of camps that are retreat centers, a lot of camps that have youth camps, and we'll continue to do those things. But how do we hone in on that cultural uniqueness that we had?
Mm,
And that's kind of what led a lot of the push from my end to our leadership of um, developing and growing the Haven Camp program, what led to Generous Brands, and where God continues to, I think, kind of push us in a good way.
that's awesome. Now, of course, everything needs to move, quote unquote, beyond the branding of things. And I know you did a workshop on that not too long ago in order to really be above reproach. What are some of the next steps you see happening in your vocational and work world in order to move Generous Brands, quote unquote, beyond the branding, so to speak?
Yeah, so I think the beyond the brand, the first idea to me was, for one, it's not something that's just a name, like a marketing term.
Mm,
It is, so like Generous Brands, there's nothing to Generous Brands. It's a name that helps describe what we're doing. but it's going beyond that. It's the why, like,
Mm.
so why are we doing what we're doing? When we announced here about doing coffee there, I had a couple people are like, well, why is Delta Lake doing coffee? And I said, well, first of all, Delta Lake's not doing coffee. Haven Camps is really the entity that's going to take on this idea of coffee.
Right.
And it's kind of um, if we feel this leading, if we sense that God is, we're praying about what to do. We're praying about how to grow. We're praying about what steps to take, and as we're sensitive to be quiet and listen, and just feel the leading to move into new areas, it was kind of an easy jump on my part to say, hey, I think this is where we're supposed to go.
Mm.
And so it's going beyond the brand. And a lot of that is communication. It's communicating, especially here locally. Like, so what do you mean generous brands? Like, I don't know what that is. Or you mean you guys are doing coffee and why? So I mentioned earlier, we're here 98 years. So we're coming up on 100 years.
Yeah.
But there's people that walk on the grounds now that are coming because they want to buy a bag of coffee because they heard about us, that didn't know Delta Lake even existed.
Mm.
And here, we've been here locally much, much longer than that person has, or even that business, or what,
Right.
on the blank. So it's been a great outreach tool. And it's good coffee. Like, I don't want to downgrade the quality of the coffee. The coffee is really good, but then it's like, why are we doing it? And people hear the stories of the coffee shop and the whole story behind it, and who we're employing, or who we're creating jobs for, or why we're doing it. And you'll just have people that have no idea who you are, that
Mm.
happen to get your bag of coffee or take a sip of a drink, and they're like, wow, really?
Mm.
That's really good. That's great that you do that.
Mm.
And ultimately our goal is that that leads to conversations like, so why would you want to do that? And for us, it's, well, listen, we believe God created all of us. There's a purpose for all of us. And the people that get to come here and make coffee and box up and bag and ship the coffee out have found a new purpose. And that purpose brings pleasure to other people, because other people now get to have the coffee and they get to drink it and they get to enjoy it. And at the same time, they get to know that they're supporting these folks who are feeling good doing the work. So it's a cyclical thing that's just, it's really, at times I can only say it's just really cool to be a part of and to see how God's using it.
It's awesome. Talk about some of the other things that you and your organizations are part of. I know that you've discussed with me the whole Night to Shine event that you are doing again this year. How did that partnership with the Tim Tebow Foundation get started?
Yeah. So what's funny was, this is going back like 7 or 8 years ago. Honestly, I was starting to think about fundraising. That's where this all started, how crazy this is. It started with fundraising, thinking about foundations. And, at one point my mind went to like, there's Christian athletes out there. Some of them are more vocal. Some of them you don't really know, but as you dig into like just some basic web searches, you start to see some of them and some of their work and some of their foundations. And Tim's we found pretty quick. And here I go into their foundation website and I look, and I was like, wait a second, they do a prom for people with disabilities. That sounds like something that would be perfect for us. So this was I think it would have been in September. And Night to Shine always happens in February, right around Valentine's Day. So I reached out. I reached out to the foundation, and they're like, "Yeah, this is something." They had already had one, so we missed the very first one. The first one started with 34 sites around the country. Wow. And by the time we finalized all the paperwork and signed up for the second year they were doing it, we were site number 100.
Wow.
Yeah, so they saw a big bump, and I think by the time that Night to Shine, the first one we did, I think there was like 135 or 140 sites. And since then it's really grown. And so we've had 6 of them. We haven't done the last 2 years because of COVID. They didn't want to do an in-person event. They wanted to do something virtual, and it just seemed like too much for us to try to coordinate.
Yeah.
So we're signed up and we're beginning to promote, and we're back at it for this next year. But again, as you think of like community outreach, it's been one of the biggest things here locally for people to find out about us. There might be times where I'll talk to somebody and they're like, wait, you guys are the ones that do that prom, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's us. That's really great. I heard about it, or I saw pictures in the newspaper, or, whatever it might be. And again, it just leads to conversations like, so what else do you do? And then we can get into things like, well, have you heard of generous roasting? Yeah, the coffee. Yeah, we do that too. And it just connects all the dots to ministry of why we're doing what we're doing. And then that leads to, where do you do coffee? Like, I didn't know about this coffee in Rome. I go, well, we're on the north side of Rome across from Lee Town Park. I don't know what that is. And I say, Delta Lake Bible Conference Center. Yeah, the camp. Well, we're right there. And it just connects all those dots for people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What advice would you give to someone today that might just be looking to get started at making an impact in their world? Where does someone even begin with an effort like this in the first place?
Yeah. So pray. I mean, the first thing I'll tell you, pray, and then find some people to pray with you. Like this is not something that you can go alone. My wife would probably laugh at me for even saying that because of how much I end up trying to do myself sometimes. But like, find people, find ministry partners, pray about it, and then honestly look in your area, wherever you're located, you'll find needs that need to be met. In our case, we were looking at like jobs for people with developmental disabilities. In some communities, homelessness is the issue. In some communities, honestly, like drug addictions and addictive things. And those are probably in all sorts of communities, but, pray and then be aware. And I'll tell you this too. One of the biggest things I had to do a couple of years into being here as a director was to get out of camp. It can be very easy to feel like, well, there's things to do here every day. And so I need to be here to do them.
Right.
And if you're constantly in that safe place, even if you're there for a good reason, you're not going to see the needs of your community. So it's getting out and, being in the community and then building relationships and having conversations and finding needs that are out there. I was at an event 2 weeks ago I could have just said no to going. Like, there was plenty of things going on here, but I felt like, yeah, this is something I should be a part of and go be there. It was another ministry partnership that we had. And out of that were conversations that I'm still having that have potential for us in our generous brands arena to grow into other areas and meet other needs that are there. If I hadn't have been there, if I hadn't have gone down to Pennsylvania and committed those couple of days, I wouldn't have ever known about these other entities. And I think in our community, there are needs that are present that partnering with these other organizations, developing these strategic relationships, those are going to lead to being able to meet some of those community needs that aren't currently being met. And when I say we have the resources, it doesn't mean we have the money. We're the typical for-profit. We take that real serious, right? But we have the resources in terms of the interest, the desire, the calling, I think. We do have the property, that at times is used heavily, but at times is not used heavily. And I think we're continuing to build partnerships that bring, equity to the table in a way that can make some of these things happen and in a way that will begin to meet additional needs. And again, in some of these cases, these are partnering with they're not always ministry partnerships. And so I think that sometimes is key, that we can kind of pigeonhole ourselves into, well, I want to partner with a church and I want to partner with this Christian, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in many cases, we're partnering with entities that look more like New York State than they do, potentially a church. And so as long as everybody goes into those conversations very open and they have an understanding of who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Right.
They see that, but they say, but we love, okay, but look what you're doing for our people. And you have a heart to be with them, to work with them, to support them. That's what we're doing. And we want to partner with that. So there's times where you got to do the proverbial thinking outside of the box a little bit and not get yourself into a spot where it's like, well, I'm not going to partner with so-and-so, maybe because they don't believe the same way I do. Well, there's needs in your community, and this is a great way for us to be a light in our community, to partner with other entities.
That's awesome. So as we begin to wrap up our time together today, I've been asking our guests about their passions, their hobbies, things that are really life-giving to them in nature. What would you say are some of those things for you? What brings you life? What's a win for Steve Clark?
Yeah, so I'm married with 2 kids, and I
Mm,
now have a daughter going into high school, a son going into junior high. And one of the things that I think brings me the most joy is to watch them find the things that they're passionate about, and then
mm,
go watch them. So last night my daughter was at dance, and I drove her and sat in the parking lot. Literally just sat in the car, tried to stay awake, sat in the car while she was in there, and knowing that she could do the thing that she was passionate about, I wanted to support that, and I enjoy that. My son has a soccer game this afternoon, so I'll cut out of work early, drive over to Utica, and watch him play.
mm,
And win or lose, I know he's doing something that he loves. And as a parent, being able to be a part of that is something that's refreshing to me. Like I'll sit there and watch them play their things all day long.
mm.
Um, and so I think, in terms of like things that I enjoy doing, those are things that I enjoy doing. Every now and then my wife will be like, well, you should take a day to yourself. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to take a day to my, yeah, there might be times here and there where I want to get away. I enjoy golfing. I don't get to do it much, but there's a refreshment that comes from getting away and doing that. But I really enjoy, for me, being able to go and see my kids do what they love to do, and just be the parent that just gets to sit back. And my schedule is free enough that I can do that. There's
Mm.
times in my year that I'm tied here and can't do much, but there's a lot of times.
Summertime.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a lot of times that I can cut out and I can go and sometimes I feel like I'm a free Uber driver, just driving them around, and then sometimes, but you get that opportunity to have conversations and have
Mm,
time that, I think is great.
mm.
And it's refreshing and life-giving to me to be able to be a part of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, the reward being with family and whatnot. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So lastly, what additional advice or thoughts do you have that maybe we didn't cover today? It's kind of a free-for-all section, open-ended, if you will. So anything you think that might be beneficial, go for it and share it as we wrap up.
Yeah. So I think for people that want to lead, I think you got to find what you're passionate about, and then you got to stick to it.
Mm,
You've got to pursue it. Find things too that are going to build into you, like that are going to enable the creativity in you to come out. There's times where some of these side ventures, and I don't even want to call them that, but some of the generous brand stuff that I still have my fingers heavily into because there's a creative side to it that I love, and it brings
mm,
that, there's a part of me that I feel like I have that, and so it enables me to do those things. But find the things that you're passionate about, but at the same time, you have to stay humble. So there's a lot of good things that take place, and we are lucky, and that's probably the wrong word to use, but at times it just feels like I'm just happy to be a part of it.
mm,
Um, to see something go from an idea to come into fruition, and then to see the impact that it has. There's a part to where, it can be easy to be prideful, but be humble, and be careful to give glory in the right
mm,
place, and then just put everything you have into it, and
mm.
pursue it. We're part of the Christian Missionary Alliance, and so one of the things with the Christian Missionary Alliance right now that's a huge focus is this one phrase that it just says all of Jesus for all the world. This
Mm.
constancy, and the Christian Missionary Alliance has been about sending people overseas and going into the least reached places of the world, and they continue to do that. Um, and we've taken that to heart here and have for 98 years. Like, we're a part of that, but there's a lot of least reached places and right around the corner. And so just being able to see, all of Jesus going to all the world, and sometimes all the worlds might be in a different continent or in the jungles of Africa, but sometimes the least reached places could be, a group home down the road. And those are the things that we've become passionate about. So for anybody, that's out there, just find what you're passionate about,
Mm.
seek the Lord, pray through it, and then do things that are going to, equip you to be able to take that passion and really use it for his glory.
Well, Steve, thank you for being part of Valor Conversations today. Thank you for your wisdom and insight. It's always an incredible opportunity to hear from people that are really engaged with culture, whether it's right next door within their own community or somewhere else around the world. And I want to thank you for your time and your expertise in this. I can't wait to connect with you again very soon. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning into Valor Conversations with your host, Jay Trainer. Valor Conversations is powered by CSB Ministries and is the official podcast of Christian Service Brigade. For more information, please visit csbministries.org. And in the meantime, stay tuned for more Valor Conversations coming your way soon.